I have a question. If you hear me say that it is not healthy to use sex as your only means of connection to your spouse, that sex is not meant to create or maintain the intimacy in your marriage, why does that turn into a sexless marriage? And this verse. Why do you think your only options are using sex as your primary method of connection or a sexless marriage? That is a false dichotomy. That's not how this works. Sex is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy that you've established before you've ever reached the bedroom. If you don't have a lot to celebrate, you shouldn't be doing the sex. You should be creating intimacy so that you have something to celebrate, because using sex as a means to try and create intimacy is using sex for the wrong reasons, and the marriage is going to crumble. And let's talk about the fact that 1 Corinthians 7:3-5 is not saying that if you don't have sex, it's going to be a sexless marriage and they're going to cheat, okay? And it's not saying that you can't ever say no to your spouse and all the other things that we hear in modern evangelicalism, okay? That verse is specifically talking about do not try to use celibacy as a form of worship, because in the Corinthian culture, people were worshiping false gods, and one of the ways that they worshiped the gods was to use celibacy as worship. Okay, so now these people are getting married and they're finding Jesus and they're thinking, oh, I know how to worship a God. I use celibacy because that's what they know. And Paul is saying, no, Jesus doesn't want your celibacy. Okay, and y'all just ignore the next verse where he says it is a concession and not a command. Okay, so let's stop misusing this verse. Let's stop trying to use sex to create and maintain intimacy, because that's not God's design. It is supposed to be a celebration of intimacy that you've established before you've reached the bedroom. And let's start actually having and talking about healthy sex.